Hey guys, go big or go home. If you think the 30-06 kicks like a mule, this isn't the show for you because we're about to go into the big bores. Hi everyone, this is Ron Spomer. Say recently one of my patrons asked why I don't cover the 40 calibers and up more often. Well, we're going to cover them now, and I think we're going to learn a few things. One of the things that I think most of us think about the 44s and the 45s and the 50s is they're big and they're heavy and they punch like crazy. And that's partly right, but also not necessarily. The 44s start really small and they don't have a lot of punch. 4440 Winchester, 100, maybe 1,100 feet per second. Pretty slow, 200 grain bullet, doesn't put out a lot of energy. 44 Rem Mag, revolver cartridge, puts out more energy than the 4440 Winchester lever action rifle cartridge, but still it is not much when compared to some of these big boys. So don't assume that just because it's a 44 or a 40 or a 45 or a 50, it's going to have more punch than, say, your 30-06. But then again, it might, especially if you go to the 50 BMG. So what's the point here? The point is that when we're talking about the 40 calibers and bigger, we're in a whole different realm than we are with the 30-06 size cartridges up to the 35s and maybe even the 37s like the 375 H&H. It's just that those cartridges are designed for general purpose shooting and longer ranges, whereas the 40s and up are sort of harking back to the days of the black powder when a bigger bullet was what we used. We got closer, we didn't shoot as far, and we used a big heavy bullet because black powder just couldn't crank up the velocity needed to get the kinds of energies that we do these days. Remember, double the weight of the projectile, you double its energy, double its velocity, and you quadruple its energy. And that's why the 30-06 can actually punch harder than a lot of these. And we'll look at some numbers to prove that. So what you've got with your bigger cartridges is some of the leftovers like the 4440 from the old days, the black powder days, and then some of the modern cartridges. But primarily, you're looking at African cartridges. The Brits really developed a lot of the big stuff because they had colonies in Africa, and they were the ones who were pioneering the way we were here. But they're not just coming up against the bison, they're coming up against rhinos and lions and big buffalo that were a lot meaner than our bison, and elephants. And they had to put a big bullet on those targets in order to stop them. Well, that continues to this day, and you have to have some of the bigger cartridges to hunt some of the dangerous game over there just for your own safety and protection. So a lot of these cartridges apply to Africa, and that's why we don't cover them as much over here. We really don't have a big need for the 45s, especially the bigger ones. Now, one exception is the 4570, and that's this rimmed cartridge right here, and that is a throwback to 1873 when it was created as the official U.S. military cartridge. And that thing, for some reason, has hung on, and it has a reputation for being a really hard puncher because it throws a 300 grain bullet, and my gosh, it was used to shoot buffalo. But if you look at the numbers, it's really not all that significant. I wrote some numbers down here, 44, 45, 40, 40. There it is, 4570 government, 300 grain bullet, 1,880 feet per second. It's about the best you're going to get out of factory loads because they have to load that thing down to weaker pressures because of the old rifles that are chambered in it, especially the old trapdoor Springfield, the U.S. military rifle from that era. Really weak. So you don't want to blow those things up. Well, what you get out of that, 2,355 foot-pounds of energy. That sounds like a lot. Know this. The old 30-06 with a 180 grain bullet going 2,750 feet per second puts out 3,023 foot-pounds of energy. It's a big difference. And that is an example of what modern powders, smokeless powders, can do when they're coupled with narrower bullets, lighter bullets, going at a higher velocity. you get your energy. And as long as your bullet is built properly to withstand that high energy impact, it's going to reach deep into the vitals and take your animal. So it's not just about big punch. Now, in Africa with dangerous game, it kind of is about big punch. And that's what these bigger ones are all about. You want to deliver a lot of energy on the target. Not so much because energy can stop it, but that bigger, wider bullet with all that oomph behind it is going to penetrate and reach the vitals and break them, especially big bones. And I have, speaking of bones, a bit of a bone to pick with the folks who talk about stopping rifles for African big game. You know, it's a big deal, and they have a lot more experience than I, but just based on what I read about stopping rifles not stopping charges makes me believe that there's really not a handheld cartridge that you can use to stop a buffalo or a rhino or an elephant. You can come close probably, but I just hear too many stories of a wounded buffalo charging and the PH puts 4, 5, sometimes 8 rounds in it, 500 grain in bullets carrying over 5,000 foot-pounds of energy each, right into the chest of that animal coming at him and doesn't stop him unless they get a brain shot or hit the spine. So stopping, I don't know. Slowing down, certainly. And obviously with a brain or spine shot, you're going to stop it. But then again, I don't think you need the bigger, heavier bullets necessarily to do it. We've got to remember, Karamojo Bell over in Africa took some 800 elephants with a 757 Mauser 173 grain bullet. He reached the brain. So, be that as it may, you're not going to find a lot of PHs who back up their clients with a 757. They want a 500 Nitro Express or a 470 Nitro Express or the 458 lot, which is a surprisingly impressive cartridge that puts out a lot of energy and has reasonable recoil that you can withstand. So I've compiled a list here of some of the more popular and/or common big bores today on the market. At our factory loads, it goes to this back page too with a few more, and they get up as big as a 700 Nitro Express. I wish I had one of these to show you. Biggest I have is this 470 Nitro Express and this 500 Nitro Express, and of course the big boy, the big of all the bigs, the 50 BMG, which of course is a military round that was used in tanks and fighter aircraft, but a lot of people like to fool around with that in really big, heavy howitzer-style rifles. And by that I mean this is not a rifle you're going to carry around and shoot like a normal sporting weight rifle. You want at least 25 pounds in a rifle shooting a 50 BMG, or 30 pounds, and they're not too bad, but otherwise the recoil would take your shoulder off. So look at this list we'll put up on the screen for you guys, and what I want you to notice is kind of the standard on your velocities and energies. A lot of these big 40s and up are shooting 300 to 500 grain bullets, and they're pushing them somewhere from 2,000 to maybe 2,400 feet per second. There are a few exceptions like the 460 Weatherby, which that's a monster. Oh, here it is. That was the 416 I touched. This is the 460 Weatherby, and it will push, 2,600 feet per second and generate what, 7,000 foot-pounds of energy? Yeah, 7,500. So look at the chart and just do those comparisons. And I think what you're going to find is that a lot of these dangerous game cartridges were designed to produce about that much energy because that's proven to be effective on taking buffalo and the big animals like that. But you've got to moderate the recoil. It's not just what you're shooting at the animal, it's how much you can take, absorb, cycle the action, and get back on target. You get too big, like the 460 Weatherby Magnum, it's just got so much energy coming back at you in recoil that it's not easy to control. And you hear a lot of reports about it being really too fast and powerful even for the bullets to stand up to it. So it's not all that popular. Most PHs find they have better success with some of the slower cartridges. Now the 416 Weatherby Magnum is the most impressive of the 416s. And that guy, you look on your list here and you'll be pretty impressed with what it does compared to the Rem Mag and the Rigby, the 416 Rigby. But those are all great cartridges that are manageable if you train and use the right weight rifle. And you'll also see on this chart I'm going to put up will be the recoil of various cartridges in a 13-pound rifle, which sounds awfully heavy, and it is. But that's kind of a standard for African big bores for dangerous game. They're not all that easy to carry around all day, but then again, generally you're not going all that far. You're generally driving until you find tracks and then getting on the tracks, or glassing up game and then going after it. And you often have assistants to carry it. The famous gun bearer. They actually have those, and they're useful, because if you have to carry that 13-pound rifle all day, you might be a little too worn out to use it effectively when you need to at the end of the day. At any rate, look at some of those recoils and compare them to the 30-06 I put on there. The little old 30-06 in a 13-pound rifle is only going to recoil with 15 foot-pounds of energy. That's not bad at all. Of course, most of us shoot 30-06s in 8-pound rifles, so it's going to be a lot more. But notice also that I threw the 50-90 sharps in there. Why did I do that? I did that to put it into perspective, because so many of us have this idea, this aura about the old bison cartridges like the 50-90 sharps as being these incredibly powerful things. And when you look at the numbers, that 50-90 sharps throwing a 550 grain bullet is only driving at 1,450 feet per second. That only produces 2,568 foot-pounds of energy. The 30-06 with a 180 grain bullet going 2,750 feet per second hits 3,023 foot-pounds of energy. So kind of puts it in perspective. But the recoil on that 50-90 sharps is more than double the recoil of the 30-06, 38 foot-pounds. So significant differences there. So go down that list and you'll see there's getting to be some pretty heavy punches coming back at you. Can you control that stuff? Now I want to point out the 416 Barrett. I don't have one here, but it roughly looks like this, the 50 BMG, because it was made from that case. They necked it down. I think they straightened the walls out a little bit on it too. I'm not real certain on it. At any rate, the 416 Barrett will throw a 450 grain bullet, 3,050 feet per second? Yeah. And that produces 9,297 foot-pounds of energy. That's what that bullet's carrying when it leaves the muzzle. Obviously, that is not designed for hunting big game anywhere. That is a precision long-range sniping rifle developed for the military. So that's a whole different program. It's kind of like the 4440 is at the low end of the scale, and the 416 or the 50 BMG are at the upper end of the scale for the big bores. Big bore is one thing, but big powder reservoir is something else. Now, the 600 Nitro Express was for decades the biggest cartridge ever built in a handheld rifle. And it threw a 900 grain bullet 2,050 feet per second to generate 8,400 foot-pounds of energy. But if you built that in a 13-pound rifle, you would be withstanding 145.8 foot-pounds of energy in recoil. Oh, I don't think very many of them were built in 13 pounds. I held one once at a SHOT Show. It was a H&H Holland and Holland, and a double, side-by-side double, of course. And I think it weighed 16 pounds. That would moderate it down to be tolerable, I suspect. I've never had a chance to shoot one, but if I do get that chance, I'm going to take it with a lot of padding. And then there's this silly 700 Nitro Express, which is somebody just wanted to make the new standard Guinness Book of Records, something like that. And that'll throw a 1,000 grain bullet, 2,000 feet per second. Just a little bit more foot-pounds of energy than the 600. Neither one of those really is what you would call a practical use firearm. I was just trying to score points on that one. But look at the recoil in a 13-pound rifle with that 50 BMG. 255.6 foot-pounds of energy. I don't know if you could survive that. I don't know if your shoulder would get separated, you get knocked out. I just don't know. I've shot 50s in 30-pound rifles, and that's not bad. 30 pounds soaks up a lot. But once again, that's not designed for sporting hunting. These are. And the point that I want to make is when you get into the 40s and larger, you're kind of talking about a whole nother animal. Aside from the little pistol cartridges like the 44 Rem Mag here, and these little rifle cartridges like the 4440, you're getting up into the big stuff. That's designed to put a big bullet and make a big hole, even if it doesn't mushroom much. So think close range. If you're hunting bears fairly close, you're going to probably want one of the big 40s. You can certainly take advantage of it. Obviously, plenty of smaller calibers will do the job and have been proven time and time again. But that's one of the reasons I think you would want one. The other reason for some of these big ones is obviously going to Africa for your buffalo hunt. But then a lot of guys just like to have them just to have them. Just to say, I've got a 458 or whatever, and shoot it a few times and enjoy the thump and show their friends and just have a good time with it. So lots of reasons and lots of different strokes for different folks. But don't assume that the big 40s are necessarily going to perform better on game than some of our smaller cartridges like the 30-06. You really need to pay attention to those velocities and bullet weights and all the rest, and of course the chamber pressures that allow you to get these velocities to determine what's actually going to be effective on game. And then finally, you need to balance that with a rifle that you can use effectively. Shoot it without flinching, recover for your next shots and that sort of thing, and be able to carry it. So that's the story on the 40s and larger, the big bores. Go big or go home? Well, I don't think you have to, but you might want to. Hey, this is Ron Spomer. Thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up if you can here. Subscribe to the channel. We'd sure appreciate it. Hats off again to all of our patrons. They really help us out, enable us to produce these videos. And until next time, this is Ron Spomer. Hunt honest and shoot straight. And don't get too much recoil.